Hello YouTube and welcome to Full Dawdle, a channel dedicated to tamping topics such as pipes, tobacco, lore, and more. I am your host, the Bearded Briarman, and without further ado, let's get lit. Welcome back YouTube, and on this episode of Full Dawdle, we're going to be discussing the top 5 punishments for tobacco use. First, a little housekeeping. I am smoking the very first full bowl out of my Dracula series Peterson 999. I went ahead and went through the break-in process on this pipe. I got it just last week, and this is the very first full bowl that I'm actually enjoying with it. I thought it was a great idea to smoke this pipe when we're discussing punishments for tobacco use. Anyway, topping our list is excommunication, because it seems that the prospect of eternal damnation is far worse than simply being sentenced to death. Pope Urban VII was one of the first to pass an edict against tobacco use. This law restricted anybody from using tobacco within the porchway or confines of a holy place. Those who were found to violate this law were threatened with excommunication. Pope Urban VIII took it one step further and outright banned the use of snuff. Snuff is the powderized form of tobacco that is commonly snorted up the nose. The reason for this was because in that time, it was thought that sneezing was too closely akin to sexual ecstasy. So it just goes to show you that the Catholics back in the day who were punished for tobacco use didn't get off easy. Unfortunately, these laws were left on the books until around 1724, when Pope Benedict XIII repealed them. So for all of my Catholic friends out there, fear not. Just as G.K. Chesterton said, in Catholicism, the pint, the pipe, and the cross can all fit together. Coming in at number 2 on my list is torture. As many of you will soon discover, torture has a way of causing the victim to pray for death. In Cairo, Egypt, if someone was found with a pipe in their hand, they would immediately be forced to eat both the pipe bowl and the burning content. Now, the pipes that we're discussing at this point would have been made of something like clay or meerschaum, a softer material than today's briar. However, I still find this punishment a bit hard to swallow. In Persia and Turkey, things were even more severe. Somebody found in possession of tobacco would have molten lead poured down their throat, or their nose and lips cut off right before they were burnt alive. In Russia, if you were found smoking a pipe, the stem of the pipe would be bored through the cartilage of your nose. Later on, that evolved, and for a first offense of tobacco use, you would be subjected to a bastinado. Bastinado is where they would cane the soles of your feet. The second offense, you would have your nose amputated. So I guess it's true that the Russians back in the day were as dangerous to tobacco users as they are to our modern democratic elections. Am I right? Am I right? Anyway, although not as bad as torture, execution still sucks. There's something so final about it. King Philip III in England instituted the death penalty for anyone who would trade or sell tobacco products to foreigners. taking it even further than that, was Sultan Murad IV out of Turkey. This guy would roam the lowly streets at night in taverns in plain clothes. If he found somebody using tobacco products, he would immediately reveal himself and then bludgeon the person to death or behead them. It was said in that time that as many as 18 people a day were being executed for using tobacco. All across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, execution was a common form of punishment for tobacco use. Most of the time they would hang the person, and sometimes they would decapitate them. To me, and I don't know about you, but I've never found a blend yet that I thought was worth losing my head over. Rounding out our list at number 4 is imprisonment. Prison has a way of making someone realize just how much they enjoy smoking their pipe. Rodrigo de Jerez, one of Columbus's crewmen, upon returning to Spain from the New World, frightened his neighbors by smoking a pipe. It was thought back then that only the devil could grant the power to breathe smoke from the mouth and the nose. So, after going in front of the Spanish Inquisition, he was imprisoned for 7 years. Similarly, Russia offered, as a punishment, exile to Siberia. And although it's not as bad as a closed cell, Siberia basically is an icy prison. Last but not least on my list is number 5, Taxation and Regulation. One of the first anti-smoking publications is attributed to King James I of England, called A Counterblast to Tobacco. In this work, King James concludes that tobacco is a custom loathsome to the eye, hateful to the nose, harmful to the brain, and dangerous to the lungs. Later, he would further try to decrease tobacco consumption in England by increasing taxes by 4,000%. Of course, it didn't work, and tobacco continued to flourish across Europe. Taxation and regulation weren't just European issues, they were also implemented in the American colonies. In the colony of Connecticut, there were limitations put on how many times somebody could smoke a day to just once, and never in the presence of any other individual. Pipe smoking is a social event, and it builds camaraderie. So I think that limiting us to being in self-isolation while doing so is quite a punishment. But further still, in the American colonies, if a man wanted to bring his wife or prospective mate over the ocean from England to the New World, he would have to pay a toll in the amount of 120 pounds of tobacco, or it was later increased to 150 pounds. So not only did you have to live with her for the rest of your life, but you also had to pay 150 pounds of your own tobacco stash. Well, that's going to wrap up our episode of Full Dawdle today. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, I bid you farewell and happy piping. Want to enlist in the Full Dawdle platoon? It's easy. Just click the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload my next episode.